The tropical mist clings to the jungle floor like smoke from a funeral pyre. It's 2:47 a.m., August 21st, 1942, and the air on Guadalcanal tastes of salt, rotting vegetation, and something else. Anticipation sharp as a bayonet's edge. Captain Haruki Nishimura crouches behind a fallen palm log, its bark still oozing sap from where American artillery shattered it days ago. His fingers trace the familiar outline of his Type 99 Arisaka rifle, 7 pounds of precision engineering that has served the Emperor faithfully from Manchuria to the Philippines. The bolt slides smooth as silk in his practiced hands, click, clack, the sound of Japanese military dominance for 40 years. Around him, 917 soldiers of Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki's 28th Infantry Regiment lie in wait, their Arisakas gleaming dully in the pre-dawn darkness. These are not green recruits. These are the Sendai Division, veterans who crushed Chinese resistance at Marco Polo Bridge, who swept through Southeast Asia like a divine wind. Each man carries the confidence of unbroken victory and the certainty that American Marines, isolated and demoralized, will break like waves against Japanese steel. Nishimura adjusts his grip on the rifle's familiar stock. 5 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber, 6 shots before he must work the bolt, reload, and fire again. But 6 shots from a master marksman are 6 dead enemies. This is the way of the samurai warrior, the way of precision over brute force. Through the humid air comes the whisper of Colonel Ichiki's voice. Remember, these Americans have been cut off for weeks. They are hungry, frightened, probably down to their last ammunition. Intelligence reports no reinforcements, no hope. We will drive them into the sea by sunrise. The plan is beautiful in its simplicity. Charge across the sandbar at the mouth of this creek the Marines call Alligator, a fitting name for where American resistance will die. Their bolt-action rifles, if they have any ammunition left, cannot match the disciplined fire of Japanese veterans. Each of Nishimura's men can work their Arisaka bolts with mechanical precision, sending aimed fire that has broken every enemy they've faced. But something feels different tonight. During the reconnaissance yesterday, the sounds from the American positions weren't quite right. Not the sharp crack of bolt-action rifles they expected, but something else, a different rhythm, a strange popping cadence that didn't match any weapon in Japanese intelligence files. Nishimura shakes off the unease. Fear is the enemy of the warrior. His Arisaka has never failed him. Accurate to 500 meters, reliable in jungle conditions, battle-tested across a dozen campaigns. What could a few desperate American Marines possibly field that would matter against the fury of the Imperial Army? The order comes down the line in hushed whispers. Prepare to attack. But as Captain Nishimura chambers his first round, he has no idea. He's about to encounter a weapon that will shatter everything the Japanese military believes about infantry combat and change the course of the Pacific War forever. How could he know that in just minutes, the sound of American firepower would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life? The confidence flowing through Japanese ranks isn't unfounded. It's built on a foundation of tactical doctrine that has conquered half of Asia. For decades, Japanese military philosophy has centered on one core principle: the supremacy of the disciplined marksman over crude volume of fire. Lieutenant Hiroshi Matsumoto, Ichiki's operations officer, had briefed the assault force just hours earlier with charts and diagrams spread across a makeshift table. The American Marines are equipped with the same bolt-action rifles we faced everywhere else, he'd explained, pointing to intelligence photographs of M1903 Springfield rifles. 1 shot, work the bolt. 1 shot, work the bolt. Our rate of trained fire equals theirs, but our spirit and tactical superiority will overwhelm them. This wasn't Japanese arrogance. This was military reality based on 4 years of continuous victory. At Marco Polo Bridge, Japanese Arisaka fire had shattered Chinese formations. In the Philippines, they'd outshot American and Filipino defenders armed with identical bolt-action technology. The Type 99 Arisaka in their hands represented the culmination of Japanese small arms development, a rifle that could deliver precise, sustained fire in the hands of soldiers trained from childhood in the warrior's way. Sergeant Kenji Tanaka checks his ammunition pouches for the 4th time, 120 rounds in stripper clips, each one hand-loaded by skilled workers in Osaka. His Arisaka Type 99 gleams with the deep blue-black finish that speaks of quality metallurgy and precision manufacturing. 7 pounds of Japanese steel that has never jammed, never failed, never let down a soldier of the Emperor. "Sergeant San," whispers Private Yamamoto, barely 18, but already a veteran of the Bataan Peninsula. The Americans sound different than the Filipinos. Their firing patterns yesterday? Silence, Tanaka hisses back, but privately, he's noticed it too. During the probe at Coley Point, when Captain Brush's Marine Patrol had ambushed their reconnaissance, the sound of American rifles hadn't matched expectations. Not the measured crack-pause crack of bolt-action fire, but something faster. Something that made his veterans' instincts twitch with unease. But surely it was nothing. Intelligence had been clear. The American Marines were equipped with standard M1903 Springfield rifles, the same weapon they'd carried since 1903. Bolt action, 5-round magazine, requiring manual cycling between shots just like their own Arisaka. The Americans might fight with desperate courage, but they couldn't change the laws of mechanical engineering. Colonel Ichiki himself moves among the troops, his presence radiating the confidence that has carried him through China, through the conquest of Guam, through every victory in his distinguished career. At 44, he is the embodiment of Japanese military excellence, a warrior scholar who has studied every aspect of modern warfare and found the Americans wanting. Remember, he tells his company commanders in a voice barely above a whisper, the enemy is isolated, demoralized, and running low on supplies. Their rifles require the same manual operation as ours, but they lack our discipline, our training, our warrior spirit. When we charge across that sandbar, our superior marksmanship and fighting spirit will break their will in minutes. It's a doctrine that has worked flawlessly for 4 years of war. Japanese soldiers, trained to fire 15 aimed rounds per minute with their bolt-action rifles, had consistently outfought enemies armed with similar weapons. The secret wasn't just the rifle. It was the man behind it. Japanese marksmen could work a bolt action with mechanical precision while maintaining accuracy that put bullets exactly where they needed to be. The weapon's intelligence seemed to confirm their superiority. Captured American M1903. Springfield rifles were examined and found to be well made but unremarkable. Bolt-action rifles with 5-round magazines, no different in principle from weapons Japanese forces had faced and defeated throughout Asia. If the Americans had any secret weapons, surely Japanese intelligence would have discovered them by now. But as the minutes tick toward the assault hour, strange reports filter back from listening posts. American voices carried differently across the water, more relaxed, less desperate than expected. And those sounds during the day? Weapons fire that came in bursts and patterns that didn't match bolt-action timing. Captain Nishimura tries to push down the growing unease. His Type 99 Arisaka is a superb weapon. Accurate, reliable, powerful enough to drop an enemy at 400 meters with a single shot. The 7.7mm cartridge hits harder than most rifles in the world. Japanese doctrine calls for aimed fire, not spray and pray tactics. One shot, one kill. the way of the warrior. The final preparations begin in the pre-dawn darkness. Bayonets are fixed to rifle muzzles with the soft click of steel on steel. Ammunition is redistributed, each man carrying exactly what he'll need for the brief, violent assault that will drive the Marines into the sea. The Arisaka Type 99s are loaded and ready, bolts closed on chambered rounds. In 10 minutes, we advance, comes the whispered command down the line. Remember, disciplined fire, aimed shots, make every bullet count. The Emperor is watching. As they prepare to move out, Sergeant Tanaka can't shake the memory of yesterday's strange sounds from American positions, but surely it's nothing more than nerves. His Arisaka has never failed him, and Japanese marksmanship has never been matched by any Western army. The assault force begins its final approach to the creek, 917 soldiers armed with the finest bolt-action rifles in the world, confident in tactics that have brought them victory after victory. They have no way of knowing they're about to face a weapon that will make their Arisaka rifles seem as obsolete as samurai swords, a weapon that will fire 8 rounds as fast as a man can pull the trigger without ever needing to work a bolt. In less than an hour, the sound of semi-automatic fire will shatter Japanese military confidence forever. At exactly 1:30 a.m., Colonel Ichiki raises his sword. The blade catches the last starlight before clouds swallow the sky, and 917 Japanese soldiers surge forward toward what they believe will be another easy victory. Captain Nishimura leads his company across the sandbar, his boots splashing through ankle-deep water as the tide retreats. Around him, the distinctive sound of Arisaka bolt cycling fills the air, click-clack, click-clack, as his men chamber rounds and advance in perfect formation. This is how Japanese infantry fights: disciplined, precise, unstoppable. The first Marine positions appear through the mist like ghosts materialized from nightmare. Nishimura raises his Type 99, sights on a muzzle flash, and squeezes the trigger. The rifle barks, and he immediately works the bolt, click-clack, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering another round. 1 second to aim, 1 second to fire, 2 seconds to cycle the bolt and acquire a new target. This is the rhythm of bolt-action warfare, perfected through decades of training. But then something impossible happens. From the Marine positions comes a sound that makes no sense. A rapid pop, 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 pop that cuts through the night like a machine gun, but it's not machine gun fire. It's too controlled, too precise, too personal. What is that sound? Nishimura shouts to Sergeant Tanaka, but Tanaka is staring in horrified fascination at the muzzle flashes across the creek. Where there should be single shots followed by the pause of bolt operation, there's continuous fire. Not the wild spray of automatic weapons, but aimed, deliberate shots coming faster than any bolt-action rifle should be able to fire. Private Yamamoto, charging beside him, suddenly spins and drops, then Private Sato, then Corporal Nakamura. Not one at a time the way men fall to aimed rifle fire, but in rapid succession, as if the Americans are somehow firing multiple shots in the time it takes a Japanese soldier to cycle his bolt once. Nishimura works his Arisaka bolt frantically, click-clack, chambers another round, aims, fires. But in the time it takes him to complete this cycle, he hears 8 distinct shots from a single American position directly in front of him. 8 shots, in the time it takes him to fire once. Impossible, he screams, but the evidence is all around him. Japanese soldiers are falling faster than they can be replaced, not because the Americans are better marksmen, but because they're firing impossibly fast. Each American seems to have the firepower of 3 or 4 Japanese soldiers. Sergeant Tanaka drops to one knee, working his bolt with the mechanical precision drilled into him since basic training. Click, clack, aim, fire, click, clack, aim, fire. But the American across from him is maintaining a steady rhythm of fire that never pauses, never slows, never stops for bolt operation. They're not using bolt-action rifles, Tanaka shouts over the growing chaos. Those aren't Springfields. The realization hits Captain Nishimura like a physical blow. The Americans aren't fighting with bolt-action rifles at all. They're using some kind of semi-automatic weapon, a rifle that fires as fast as a man can pull the trigger without ever needing to work a bolt. But that's impossible. Intelligence had been clear. The Americans were equipped with M1903 Springfield rifles, the same bolt-action technology Japan had been facing and defeating for 4 years. How could they have developed and fielded a semi-automatic rifle without Japanese intelligence discovering it? The answer comes in the form of that distinctive ping that cuts through the battle, the sound of an empty 8-round clip ejecting from an American rifle. But before Nishimura can process what that sound means, it's followed immediately by the resumption of rapid fire as the American soldier slams in a fresh clip and continues shooting. 8 rounds. The Americans are carrying rifles that hold 8 rounds and fire them as fast as a man can squeeze the trigger. Around him, the assault is disintegrating. Japanese soldiers trained for 40 years in the supremacy of aimed bolt-action fire are being mowed down by Americans who can fire 3 times as fast. The tactical advantage that has carried the Imperial Army to victory after victory across Asia is being shattered by American semi-automatic firepower. "Fall back!" Nishimura screams, but there's nowhere to fall back to. Colonel Ichiki, convinced this would be a quick victory against demoralized Marines, has committed his entire force to a frontal assault across open ground. And that ground is now a killing field swept by semi-automatic fire that makes Japanese bolt-action rifles seem like relics from another century. Private Yamamoto, somehow still alive despite a bullet through his shoulder, staggers toward Nishimura. "Captain-san, what are those weapons? They fire like machine guns, but they're aimed like rifles." Before Nishimura can answer, the American counterattack begins. Marine reinforcements surge forward, and now he can see the weapons that are destroying his regiment. They look like rifles, shoulder-fired, aimed weapons, but they're pouring out sustained fire without pause for bolt operation. One American Marine, barely 20 years old, works his way through Nishimura's company with methodical precision. 8 shots, ping, reload, 8 more shots, ping, reload. In the time it takes Nishimura to fire twice with his Arisaka, this single American has fired 16 aimed rounds. The mathematical reality is devastating. If each American can fire 8 rounds to every 3 Japanese rounds, then 2,000 Marines with semi-automatic rifles have the firepower of 5,000 Japanese soldiers with bolt actions. The 1st Marine Division isn't undermanned, it's actually outgunning the entire Japanese assault force. This is what defeat sounds like, Sergeant Tanaka whispers as he lies bleeding in the sand, listening to the rapid pop, 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 pop of American semi-automatic fire cutting down the last of their attack. This is the sound of our rifles becoming obsolete. By 5 a.m., as Marine tanks roll across the sandbar, crushing everything in their path, the tactical revolution is complete. Of 917 Japanese soldiers who charged across that sandbar with supreme confidence in their bolt-action rifles, only 15 will survive to tell the tale. Captain Nishimura, crawling through the surf with a bullet in his leg, looks back at the carnage and understands with crystal clarity what has just happened. The Americans haven't just won a battle. They've made the Arisaka Type 99, the pride of Japanese small arms manufacturing, tactically obsolete overnight. The semi-automatic rifle, this weapon the Americans call the M1 Garand, has just changed the fundamental mathematics of infantry combat. And Japan, with its factories full of bolt-action rifles and its doctrine built around single-shot precision, is suddenly fighting World War II with World War I weapons. As the sun rises over Guadalcanal, painting the beach red with the blood of the Ichiki Regiment, one terrible truth becomes clear. Every Japanese soldier in the Pacific is now carrying a rifle that fires 3 times slower than his American counterpart. The strategic implications are staggering. If the Americans can mass-produce semi-automatic rifles while Japan remains locked into bolt-action technology, every future battle will see Japanese forces outgunned by 3-to-1 firepower ratios. The weapon that was supposed to be Japan's backbone, the precision Arisaka rifle, has just become its Achilles heel. The 15 survivors of the Ichiki Regiment who stagger back to Taivu Point carry more than wounds. They carry a revelation that will shake the Japanese military to its core. Captain Nishimura, his leg bandaged with torn uniform fabric, sits in the regimental aid station and tries to explain the impossible to his commanding officers. They fire 8 rounds without working the bolt, he repeats for the 3rd time, knowing how insane it sounds. 8 rounds, then a metallic ping, then 8 more rounds immediately. No pause, no bolt operation. The rifle fires as fast as they can pull the trigger. The intelligence. Officers exchange glances. Semi-automatic rifles are theoretical weapons, experimental designs that exist in laboratories and testing facilities. The idea that the Americans have not only perfected such a weapon, but mass-produced and fielded it to every infantry soldier seems impossible. But the evidence is undeniable. Radio intercepts from American positions reveal they call their weapon the M1 Garand, named after its Canadian-American designer, John Garand. As Japanese intelligence pieces together the shocking truth, they realize the Americans have achieved something the Japanese military considered a fantasy: a semi-automatic rifle reliable enough for frontline infantry use. The implications cascade through Japanese strategic planning like falling dominoes. If every American soldier can fire 3 times faster than every Japanese soldier, then Japan's numerical superiority in the Pacific is meaningless. The 164th Infantry Regiment, arriving at Guadalcanal in October 1942, will demonstrate this reality when Army soldiers armed with M1 Garands integrate seamlessly with Marine forces and multiply American firepower exponentially. Lieutenant Colonel John B. George, serving with the 164th, will later write, "This rifle was probably the very best in the war, and the best military hand weapon ever placed on the battlefield. As Army units with M1 Garands fight alongside Marines still carrying bolt-action M1903 Springfields, the difference becomes stark. Marines observe firsthand the enormous increase in firepower that Army forces enjoy with their Garand rifles. By December 1942, desperate Japanese engineers at Yokosuka Naval Arsenal begin the frantic process of reverse engineering captured M1 Garand rifles. Working around the clock, they modify American rifles to fire Japanese 7.7 by 58 mm ammunition, discovering that the semi-automatic action can indeed function with their cartridges. But copying the Garand's complex gas-operated system proves infinitely more challenging than Japanese metallurgy and manufacturing can quickly master. The result is the Type 4 rifle, Japan's desperate attempt to match American firepower. But by the time prototype Type 4 rifles reach limited production in late 1944, it's far too late. American factories have produced over 5 million M1 Garand rifles, while Japanese industry manages to complete fewer than 100 Type 4 rifles before surrender in August 1945. The psychological impact on Japanese forces is as devastating as the tactical disadvantage. Soldiers who had carried their Arisaka rifles with pride now understand they're carrying weapons that make them sitting ducks. Every firefight becomes a race against time. Japanese soldiers working their bolts frantically while Americans pour out rapid fire that leaves no opportunity for aimed response. Marine Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, wielding machine guns at Henderson Field, will earn the Medal of Honor, partly because M1 Garand-equipped infantry can provide the sustained supporting fire his crew-served weapons need. The integration of semi-automatic rifles into American infantry tactics creates a combined arms effect that Japanese bolt-action doctrine simply cannot match. The technological revolution spreads beyond individual weapons to reshape entire military doctrines. American squads armed with Garands can suppress enemy positions while maneuvering, something impossible with bolt-action rifles that require soldiers to stop, aim, fire, and cycle bolts. Japanese forces, trained in tactics built around bolt-action limitations, find themselves tactically obsolete overnight. General George S. Patton will call the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. But for Japanese survivors like Captain Nishimura, it represents something else entirely: the moment their military supremacy died on a sandbar in the Solomon Islands. Today, military analysts recognize Guadalcanal as the moment when technological advantage shifted decisively to the Allies. The M1 Garand didn't just win battles. It demonstrated how rapidly military technology can evolve to make entire armies obsolete. In our modern era of hypersonic missiles, artificial intelligence, and drone warfare, the lesson remains urgent. The military that fails to innovate doesn't just lose advantages, it loses wars. The sound that haunted Captain Nishimura's nightmares, that rapid pop, 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 pop of semi-automatic fire, was the sound of the future arriving on the battlefield. It was the sound of American industrial innovation turning the tide of World War II, one trigger pull at a time. What military technology today might be creating similar nightmares for our adversaries? The M1. Garand's legacy reminds us that in warfare, technological surprise doesn't just change battles, it changes history.